Here we are. Here we go. Try not to mess it up. All right. Hi. Hello there, my name is Mackenzie. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for being here. Today we are doing my November wrap-up. I have no idea what the stats are. I do this every month. I forget to write down the stats until I'm here in the middle of the video. How many books did I read? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I read 10 books in the month of August. Go me. I'm very happy about it. And probably a lot of pages. I'll put the number on the screen. I'm not sure how many genres. Let's see. I've got sci-fi, fantasy, romance, graphic novels, manga, magical realism. I got a lot here. I'm happy about it. I'm pretty happy with how the reading month went. The beginning of the month felt a little slow because I was reading some big books, and then I started to add in some manga, and then I read more, and then I started audiobooks. A few of these books I read with the audio and the physical copy so I could focus and or do other things. As always, we're gonna go through the books in the order in which I have finished them. I'll put this right here. The first book that I read, and even the first book that I started this month, was God, Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert. I am in the middle of reading the Dune series. I think there's only 2 more after this that were originally written by Frank Herbert, and then there are like continuation series written by his son Brian Herbert, which I am more than likely going to read. I just want to get through these ones first. Oh man. What to say about this 4th book? I think it's my favorite. It's kind of the craziest thing. Man, this is so weird. This series is so weird. And it's creepy and gross, and there's a lot of like breeding program type things. It's, God, it's uncomfortable. This one had like the first instances of like, there was homosexual behavior in this book, and homophobia. So it was just a very strange kind of like 4th book. It's also like 1,000 years between the 3rd book and the 4th book. So like this series overall is a very strange series. We're following basically the Atreides family. Book 1 is Paul when he's like young adult teenager. Book 2 is when he's an adult. Book 3 is about his children, and book 4 is 1,000 years later. And it's so interesting. I love stories like that follow that kind of generational family thing. This book, I feel like, has been the biggest departure from what the original book was about. We're still on Dune, we're still talking about Dune, but I feel like we've gotten much more like we moved up the political ladder, and the conniving and the machinations or machining. It's really good. It's really great. I gave this 4 stars. I loved it. The next book that I read and finished was The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I loved this book. I did it for a reading vlog where I read this one and Empire of Gold. I'll link that up in the cards for you guys, but I will let you know right now that I gave this a 5 star. Amazing. The next book that I read was Learn My Lesson by Katie Robert. So this book is following the Wicked Villains series. It is the 2nd book. It is about Hades and Megara and Hercules, and oh my god. This was such a cute, sweet, but very spicy, sexy. It was so good. And like, I don't know, it was also really cute about like the way that they were opening up and being vulnerable with each other, and like, I have no words. This was very cute. This was so cute for being like a sexy book, you know? So we have Meg and Hades. We saw them in the first book. They are like together, but in an open relationship, and he kind of tells her to go have sex with this guy so he can like walk in on them. And the guy that she ends up having sex with is Hercules. And Hercules is like, I love Meg, and I have to get her away from Hades, because he thinks Hades is like taking her against her consent. And then once Hercules realizes what's happening, he kind of likes it. It's great. It's so good. I rated this a 4-star. It was very good. I'm going to continue. Katie Robert, excelente. Excelente. Then I finished Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith, Volume 1. So I got this book probably like a day or two after it was published because I was very nervous that my Barnes & Noble was going to sell out very quickly, because that's what happens with very, very popular books. So I went and I bought it, and I read it that same night, and I guess I didn't know fully what this series was going to be talking about and developing on. So yes, we are following Persephone and Hades, and it is a retelling of their myth. The gods do exist. They just kind of exist in more of like a professional situation. Like Hades runs the underworld like a business, and there are maidens, something of eternal maidenhood, and it's like a club that, not really a club, it's like a cult that Persephone is, that Demeter is trying to get Persephone to be into, so that way she'll be a maiden forever and never marry or have sex. And Persephone is permitted to go to Olympus. Is it Olympus? And Olympus is like a city. It's very interesting. It's very, very cool. I like the idea. I like the art style. I really like the art style. In fact, like, the art was kind of the best part. Not the best part, because I really enjoy Hades and Persephone retellings in any capacity, so I was going to love it anyway. So I enjoyed the story that was happening. It was just very... like, this whole story, not only is it dealing with Persephone and Hades being together, it's also dealing with Persephone being raped, and, like, I didn't know that that's where we were going. And so, like, the whole, like, first, I don't know, like 80% of it, it's like really cool. You notice that her abuser's in the story, and that he is not very kind and almost kind of creepy, but it doesn't seem like it's going to go that far. And then, like, the very last thing that happens in this book is that he rapes her, and it's like, there's no aftercare at all. There's no continuation of the story or making sure that the reader was okay. And, like, there was a content warning at the beginning of the book saying that it deals with physical and mental abuse, sexual trauma, and toxic relationships. And yes, it does, but also it's hard, especially because this was being released as a webtoon and it comes out like weekly in chapters. So, like, I understand the need to create an ending in one volume and a beginning in another, and especially since that this situation that happens is like the overarching storyline between, like, so there's like only 26 chapters in this book, and there's a total of like 180 something, I believe, out on Webtoon right now. And so after I read this, I went immediately on Webtoon and I read all of it in one day, all of it. It was crazy. But it was very difficult for me to, like, have to end this book and just be like, oh, and nothing. That's the last thing that happens, and I just have to be okay with it. It was not very comforting at all. It was very hard to read. So I do recommend that if you're going to read this, if you haven't read it already, if you're sensitive to that material, have something ready to comfort yourself afterwards, because it was late and when I was reading this, and right after reading it, I had to go to bed because I was exhausted. So I really wasn't prepared to receive this material. It was great, and it handles, you know, in the future tunes, it also handles it very well about what's happening in the care of Persephone and everything else, and I do appreciate it, and I'm not bashing it for including it. It's just hard to, when you make it the overarching plot line and having it ending in like having it be the ending of book 1 is just very, very hard if there's literally nothing afterwards. Like there's maybe a page or two afterwards, and it didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel, and you know, that's how it's supposed to feel because it's an overarching thing. But I just wish I was better prepared so that way I could have had something to make me feel better after reading it. All I'm saying. I did end up giving this a 4-star. Like I said, the artwork was absolutely amazing, and like even during the scene, the way it was portrayed, Persephone like emotionally and going into herself to forget, and it was very powerful and very, gosh, it worked for the story so well. The artwork does really well for the own story. Really like it. And it has a lot of the gods in it. I feel like it has all of them, and I really like the retelling of the story and just being immersed in the Greek myths again. That'll always be my thing. The next book that I finished was The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. Like I said earlier, I read this for a reading vlog. I went into detail on all of my thoughts in that vlog, so I won't waste your time here. I will say that I gave this a 5-star, making the Devabad trilogy, I believe, the only trilogy I've ever given all 3 of the books 5 stars, which is amazing, and I'm very happy about it. I loved those books. They break my heart, you guys. I don't even know what to do about it. Okay, then we have Tokyo Ghoul Volume 2, which is the next book that I finished. I read this for a, oh gosh, what did I read it for? Where I read the manga and watch the anime and talk about the differences in the video. I'll link that up in the cards for you guys if you want to see that. I really did enjoy this volume. The story is so tragic and heartbreaking, and I'm just very much attracted to that tragedy, I guess. It is like a melancholic feeling for me, and it just like makes me feel better. I don't understand it, but maybe you feel the same. And if you do, pick it up. It's really good. Gosh, oh my god. I just opened up to like the most horrific page. Ugh. This volume does include, I think, my favorite arc from the first season, because I watched the show first, so from the show there was one particular arc that was my favorite and the most heartbreaking, and it is in this volume, and I truly enjoyed it. It was heartbreaking to see it on page, and I enjoyed the tragedy. Thank you. Yes. Okay. The next book that I read was The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. What to say about this book? I wasn't really sure what I was going to be getting into when I read this book in regards to the writing style. The writing style is so interesting and so like almost removed, like someone's telling you a story, like a fairy tale, and it's really sweet and beautiful and cozy. It was so cozy and adorable and cute, and like the relationships. I would have liked more character background on some of these characters. I feel like the bad guys were bad just for the sake of it. So I would have liked a little bit more background on them, but it really didn't matter because it was so cute. Oh my gosh, it was so cute. Man. So this one is about a little girl. No, this one is about a witch who stumbles across this like village, and the village for some reason every year leaves a baby on the outskirts of the village outside the walls, presumably to be killed. So the witch, seeing that this child is left alone, takes the child away and finds a home for them on the other side of like the valley, basically. And not known to the witch is that the people in the village think it is that they are sacrificing their children to the witch so that way she won't harm them. So it's like this huge like misunderstanding because neither of them talk to each other. Like the witch doesn't talk to the village. It's a very like slightly creepy cultish vibe in the village. You're following a few different perspectives. You're following the perspective of the witch, the little girl sometimes, and you're also following the perspective of one of the citizens in the village. It's a very, very cute book. It's very sweet and adorable and cozy, like I said, full of like very poetic little pieces. It was just very enjoyable. So I gave this 4 stars. The next book that I finished is The Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the second in the series, but there were 2 books before that that were like short stories mushed together about The Witcher. So like this is technically the 4th, but in the serialization, it's the 2nd. Could he have made it more confusing? Did I make it more confusing? Who knows? 1, 2, 3. Technically, this one is the one that says 1, but these come before it and were published before it. So, like, 4 or 2? Who knows? So, this book I enjoyed more than Blood of Elves simply because there was so much more that happened. In Blood of Elves, it was a very long first book. It wasn't a long first book, but it was kind of long in the sense that nothing really happened. It was more of like a slice of life. Like, this is how we transition from the short stories to the serialization. And that's what Blood of Elves was. But Time of Contempt was, oh my gosh, so much was happening. And I was afraid, and I was nervous, and we were adventuring, and Ciri is becoming a character that I enjoy having around and seeing what she does and her thoughts and how she takes control of her life. There were instances where I was just upset with what was happening, how Yennefer was like just controlling Ciri's life, and I was not happy about the decisions that Yennefer was making, and apparently Ciri wasn't either, and I was just so happy about it. And then like I love that we are getting Geralt and Yennefer and Ciri in this like family dynamic where these 2 parents love each other and their child so much, but they like are never on the same page. Like Geralt doesn't agree with Yennefer, but he lets her do what she wants, and Yennefer even claims to say, don't think about what you're gonna do, just do it because you have to keep doing something. And like Ciri's the only one where I'm like, you go girl, like tell these adults. So good. So good. Very enjoyable. So I read this because the Witcher Season 2 is coming out, and I believe it's going to cover the first and second books. At least that's what I am gathering from the trailer. So I wanted to read the books before the season come out because I am doing Witcher videos. So stay tuned for those. Alright, the last 2 books were a little bit of a disappointment, you guys. So first I read Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. This is a book about an area. Like, I don't even know what this kingdom is called, but there are humans and then there are yokai. And yokai are, I believe, typically Japanese demons, and there's a bunch of different yokai, and basically, the way the emperor chooses a wife is all of these women come and they have to face like the 4 seasons in these like magical rooms. So they face like summer, fall, winter, and then spring as the end, and if they conquer all the seasons, then they become empress. And the only catch is that only a human can become the empress, but we have a half yokai, Mary, who is half yokai, and she conquers the rooms, and she's becoming empress. And, like, I feel like this book really could have been a duology, or even a series, but only if they added a lot more. Like, there was a lot of background on, like, the yokai and their place in the world and how they're, like, second-class citizens and how it's difficult for them and no one understands them. But then, like, the actual, like, fighting in the rooms was very brief. It did remind me a little bit of Hunger Games, and I was really excited for it, but I needed more of it. And, like, the ending was so rushed. Like, out of nowhere, we were ending the book, and we just glazed over the fact of, like, there was a revolution, and it's just like, oh, okay, so the good guys won, but we didn't really get to see them win. Like, there was one final battle, but it didn't feel like they were battling for control. It was just like the first of many battles. Like, they didn't win the war, you know? It was really strange. I did enjoy, like, a lot of the ideas that were being presented. I really liked the mythology of the yokai and how all of them were different, and Mary is something called an animal wife, where they are, you know, superhumanly beautiful, and they go out and they find a husband who is rich to steal his fortune and come back to the tribe, and they transform into like these monster beasts. And there's also like a magical dark prince character, and I was all about that, okay? I was all about that, but it was so superficial. And like, it sucks because I wanted so much more of it, and this is a standalone, and so not only is there not any more of it, what I did get of it was just, it was not enough. It was good, but it wasn't enough. 3 stars. Then I read The Kingdom of Back by Mary Lou. So this is one of the authors, I think the ringleader author, who did that whole non-fungible token to get into a YA novel type BS. So I wanted to read this book so I could, first of all, get it off my TBR and see if it's worth keeping or not. I don't think so. There was a lot about this book that I did like, and a lot that I didn't like. This book follows Mozart's sister. So it's Wolfgang Mozart, who is the composer that we know of, and his sister is Mary Anna Mozart, and they call her Nannerl. They call her Nannerl, and they call Wolfgang Wolfroll, and thank God that I read the audiobook, because without the German pronunciation of this, I was gonna have a hard time. So basically, Nannerl was also a pianist. She did play. This plays with the idea that she also composed her own work that was taken and published under Wolfgang's name. This also plays with the idea that she wanted so badly to be a composer and to not be forgotten that this magical fairy, dark fairy kind of creature comes from this magical world. The Kingdom of Back is something that Nannerl, the real Nannerl, said that her and her brother imagined. It was like an imaginary place where they were the rulers, and, you know, because they traveled a lot to play their music. So they imagined a lot as kids. And a lot of it was so good. Like the dark fairy aspect, the fact that it was like Nannerl wanted so much to be remembered that I felt like I was reading a villain backstory. That was so cool to me. And this magical like realism where it's not truly explained because Nannerl doesn't understand why it's happening, but she was slipping from the real world into the magical world, and how creepy and cute. Like I love dark fairies. It'll never not be so cool to me how, like, we are equally attracted to and afraid of the mythical monsters we create. It's so... love it. Loved those aspects. What I didn't love was... because this is a historical fiction, we know that certain things are fact. We know that Wolfgang dies in his 30s. We know that he was a very sick human being from his body. His body was sick and weak. We also know that Nannerl survives him, that she gets married, that she stops traveling with him and performing with him once she reaches marrying age so she could focus on getting married off, and that she has kids of her own, blah, blah, blah. We know all of that has to happen. But at the beginning of this book, Nannerl is a different character. She doesn't want to get married. She doesn't want kids. She doesn't want any of those things. And she makes this wish to be a composer and to be remembered so she doesn't have to. And then it's like this whole book comes around and it comes full circle into the fact that Nannerl has to give up everything. Everything. She has to give up her music and her composing, and I don't agree. I don't agree. And it was one thing then to have that ending that I just did not agree with and I didn't like, and it made me sad. And then I read the author's note. And I almost never do this. Almost never. But I read it because I wanted to know just a little bit more. So Mary Lou practiced. She played the piano. She played Mozart. She researched him and Nannerl. And she says, I wrote this book for the Nannerls of today and tomorrow. Excuse me. But you, in this author note and in this story, put forth the idea that Nannerl's genius was stolen and that she is more of a lost kind of gem of history. None of her music has survived. There are letters from Mozart that say she is a good composer, but none of her compositions have survived. And you are going to dedicate this book to the Nannerls of today and tomorrow, assuming that there will be more women in the future who will have their place in history taken by men. Excuse me, what? No. That is not a sentiment I will be getting behind, not in the year that this was published of 2020. 3 stars. I enjoyed the magical realism. I will not be keeping this book. I was going to keep it if it was going to be something that I really enjoyed, but because of the author and because of that storyline and that author note, I don't think that it's something that I need to have on my shelf anymore. This cover is so cool, you guys. But it needed a little bit more. I needed something better. Sorry. Ooh, I did it. I did it. Did you see that? It was magical. Alright, so that was November's wrap-up. All 10 of the books I read. However many pages and however many genres I read this month. I did not include in that the reading of the webtoon that I did for the rest of Lore Olympus, mainly because I don't know how to count that. I read like 120 chapters of it, and like, I don't know how to count that in pages or books or anything, so like, it's there. But I hope you enjoyed this wrap-up. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! Now I get to put them on my shelf.